anxiety happens when you spend too much time worrying or obsessing about things that have not happened. Welcome. And this episode is brought to you in part by Marvia. We'll be hearing more about them later in the show. But first, some news. I'm really excited to tell you that we have expanded our partnership with LinkedIn Learning. So now able to reach 2.4 million readers and viewers. And I'm just so happy to announce that we're doing a special program coming up December 9th. And that'll be at 11 a.m. Eastern time. If you work with chief marketing officers, if you want to be a chief marketing officer, or you just don't understand how CMOs work and what makes CMOs really successful in this almost post-pandemic era, be sure to join us and sign up for this special masterclass live stream on December 9th. And my producer, Richard, will be sure to put the banner and the registration link later. Let's talk a little bit today about our careers and our customers. When it comes to our careers and our customers and the relationships we have with them, the way we feel is everything. Yet there's a paradox happening in our workplaces today. On the one hand, we're witnessing really low unemployment. It's down in the United States now to 4.8%. We're seeing consumer spending at all-time highs, and we're seeing frenetic hiring and recruiting going on for marketing professionals. Now, on the other hand, we're seeing very high rates of drug overdose. We've exceeded 100,000 this week in the United States, which is very disheartening. We are seeing a lot of overbooked, overtaxed health professionals, and we're seeing labor shortages because people are stressed and families are stressed, daycare shortages. So we have this unfortunate duality happening around us right now. Anxiety is causing a shadow over today's shining stars, which are the people that are here in our live stream. And it's our job as marketing leaders to keep our lights on for ourselves as well as our teams. So I'm here today with Chester Elton because we're going to bring you some ideas and some strategies to minimize the long-term deleterious effects of anxiety on ourselves and our people around us. I'm really excited about having Chester here. He's a fellow member of the 100 Coaches community, and he is the co-author of a great book, Anxiety at Work. And I love this book. Chester is also one of the top global gurus of leadership. He's been called the apostle of appreciation, and he works with top brands like AT&T, Avis Group, the National Football League, and Procter & Gamble. So we're going to help you unpack some of the sources of anxiety and help you walk away today refreshed and inspired with these new ideas. So without further ado, Chester, welcome to the stream.
Well, thank you very much for the invitation. Always a pleasure to spend some time with you. And we got to spend some time in person just a few days ago in New York City. It wasn't that fun.
You know, that New York trip for me was one of my favorite trips of the year, Chester. It was so great to see you in person.
Yeah.
It really was.
And many of the other 100 coaches as well. You know, it's so interesting as you talk about marketing and you talk about anxiety and so on. Don't your anxiety levels go down when you surround yourself with good people like that?
Absolutely. I was hugging Jacqueline, who's the chief of staff for 100 Coaches. And I have to tell you, I said, I am crying. Like I just started crying because I was so full of happiness and joy for just being there and getting to hug people that I've worked with and spoken with for the last 21 months. So it felt really great. It really felt great. Anxiety is a bit of a maudlin topic, and I don't mean to jump into Debbie Downer mode here, Chester. I do think, though, that we have to at least name it and kind of define what it is. When you set out to write this great book with both Adrian Gostick and his son Anthony, like, what was the trigger for you that said this is a real issue and we need to talk about it and write about it?
Anthony was the trigger, really. He and his father had started to write on this a few years ago, actually. And, Anthony's a great story. I've known Anthony for 20 years, and he's only 25 years old. So I've known him for the majority of his life. And he came to us and he said, you oldies never talk about anxiety or mental health. And he says, my generation, it's all we talk about. We grew up much differently than you guys did. We've got all this information overload. We've got these perfect lives on Facebook. We've got active shooter drills in schools and so on. And, you may not want to talk about it because you think it's a sign of weakness or there's a stigma there. He said, you've got to understand there's a generational difference here. And our work has always been in culture, leadership teams, and so on. Well, it became very apparent as we started to take a deep dive into the numbers. You can't have a healthy team. You can't have a productive culture if you're not addressing mental health and anxiety in particular. And it kind of makes sense, doesn't it, Lisa?
It really does. And, another wonderful person in our community who we're going to be hearing from in a moment is Dr. Anna Yusum. And one of the things that she said to me a while back it really stuck with me. She said, anxiety happens when you spend too much time worrying or obsessing about things that have not happened,
right,
that have not yet happened and may never happen in the future. And depression is when we overthink or obsess about things that happened in the past. That was a really helpful distinction for me.
Yeah, and beyond brilliant. We've talked to her on a couple of occasions. Yeah, I think this idea of that persistent worry. Often we use stress and anxiety interchangeably, and I don't think they are. The stress is that momentary, that push through, get that deadline. It's an episode. Whereas anxiety is that persistent worry, that gnawing in the back of your brain that just doesn't go away, that keeps you from sleeping well, that keeps you from engaging in the moment. So I love, though, what she said about depression. That's worrying about things that have happened that obviously you can't change, right? And we've all gone through that as well.
Yes, we certainly have. By the way, before we get some questions from the audience, we have Todd, another 100 Coaches member. Todd Churches is with us from New York City. It's great to see you here, Todd, and supporting our work. And I'd love to hear your thoughts too, Chester, on the whole idea of things that companies do too much of, or maybe how they get the management of anxiety wrong. Because that you went through a lot of that in your book and describes just examples of things that aren't really working so well.
Yeah, well, the employee assistance programs, while everybody seems to have one, are incredibly underutilized or underused. I think the average is like 3%. And one of the things that the companies are getting wrong is they think, well, we've got these programs. Go ahead, click and chase, what really needs to be happening on a more regular basis is that one-on-one, that trust between the immediate supervisor and the employee. We coach executives up on anxiety to do three things. And one is to normalize the conversation. It's not lost on us that 90% of employees won't talk to their manager and supervisor about mental health or anxiety. I mean, 90%. There's that lack of trust there, right? Because there's that stigma attached to it. So the first thing you've got to do is normalize that conversation. Everybody goes through it. This is a normal human emotion. Don't shy away from it. Secondly is to destigmatize it. Look, if you broke your arm and came to work with your arm in a sling, we say, oh, geez, Lisa, take care of yourself, take some time off. Have you seen all the right doctors? Have you taken care of everything you need to take care of? And yet when somebody comes to work with anxiety or mental health issue, we won't talk about that. We'll talk about a broken arm, but we won't talk about overload. We won't talk about anxiety, right? And then the third thing is to really empathize. Now, you've done a lot of work in leadership, Lisa. And it's interesting, 3 or 4 years ago, if you'd said, what are the characteristics of great leaders? You'd say, oh, a great motivator, visionary, transparent, and so on. Right now, as far as I'm concerned, there's only one attribute that matters, and it's empathy. If you can't be empathetic with your people, if you can't create a safe place for them to talk about these issues, none of that other stuff matters. So normalize the conversation, destigmatize the conversation, and empathize with your people. Now, does that resonate with you?
Well, it really does. And I also want to mention to people, one to add to that is be careful about your list of to-dos with your teams. One of the things my best clients struggle with is they have CEOs or leaders who say, well, you folks in marketing are so good at what you do, we're going to add more to your plate. And they don't allow the CMOs to say, well, that's fine. Let's take a look at removing some things from the plate. And the other thing I would suggest we add to that is watch out for giving lots of extra work to your most effective or busiest people because you think they're so effective at getting things done, or they're considered your most productive team members. So those would be the ones I would add too.
Right. It is interesting that most often your top performers have the most anxiety, right? They're the ones that don't want to ever let anybody down. They're people pleasers. They're defined by the work they can get done, by the success, like you say, the boxes they can check on that list. And so one of the things we talk about in the book is we say, well, look for changes in behavior, because these top performers, not only can you not give them too much work, because they'll never say no, right? Is they're really good at hiding it. And so subtle changes in behavior, somebody that's never late starts showing up late. Someone whose work is always first rate is coming in a little shoddy. It is really interesting that we want to write that off as just a bad day. Maybe not. So the question is, so then how do you approach somebody that you're pretty sure, is suffering from anxiety, and yet do it in a way that's not intrusive? And the language that we discovered is, I noticed. Hey, Lisa, I noticed that you're having a tough time getting to work on time or to showing up at meetings on time. Is there something we can do? Are you being overloaded? Can we give you some more resources? How can I help? And when you say, I've noticed, it's translated to, I care. So hopefully that's a tip that can help your listeners.
Thank you. I love that. I've jotted that down for myself. As we're starting to get our CMOs back to live in-person meetings here in the Washington area, and they come in from across the country. And the marketing growth leaders are now trying to adjust to being together, wearing masks, staying distant. And, for some, there's still some anxiety about getting back to in-person gatherings. So I trust my group is not alone in that regard.
Yeah, it's a big concern for everybody, no doubt about it.
Yeah. I also noticed we have a comment from Todd in New York, and he mentions to us, he says, hey, you guys, it's so true. Those people who care the most often worry the most.
I think he's spot on.
Yeah, Todd, you're so right. I'd love us to take a moment and let's hear also some of the thoughts from Dr. Anna Yusum, who wants to share some of her own experiences helping with anxiety at work.
It's Dr. Anna Yusum, and it's a pleasure to be here today with you talking about mindfully managing anxiety in the workplace. I'm a psychiatrist on the clinical faculty at Yale, and I have been managing anxiety in the workplace with my colleagues and patients for the last 15 years. The first question I wanted to address is, how does anxiety present, and how can employers recognize anxiety in some of their employees? So anxiety is an interesting thing, and it presents in many different ways, often different ways in different people. We as human beings tend to experience anxiety primarily in one of two ways. We either psychologize our anxiety or we somaticize our anxiety. When we psychologize our anxiety, we feel anxiety through the mind and through our mood. This means through the mind that we can have trouble concentrating. We can worry. We can have worried thoughts. We can obsess. We can ruminate. Our thoughts can seem out of control. And part of psychologizing also means that our mood is affected. We can be moody or irritable or sad or feel guilty or ashamed or depressed. All of that is how we psychologize anxiety. On the other side is the somatization of anxiety, which is when we feel anxiety through our body. This is when we're anxious, we can have heart palpitations, our chest could tighten, we can have headaches, our jaw can clench, we can feel really, really tired in our body, we can have trouble sleeping. This is the somatization of anxiety. Most people usually do a combination of both, but usually one predominates in every individual. Anxiety can also have social consequences. We can avoid certain social situations, such as anxiety about public speaking will make you obviously not speak in public. Social anxiety will make you avoid social situations. Some people have phobias or anxieties about flying, so they'll avoid trips, all of which can have significant impact for your career and for your workplace performance. Now, what can managers do and what could employers do to recognize anxiety in their colleagues and in their employees? First and foremost, the recognition, if and when you recognize it, is important, and to let people know that it's actually quite normal, especially in this climate, in the post-COVID world, to be feeling anxious. So normalizing and the normalization of anxiety is so key these days. The second is transparency. And if someone in a position of leadership and power has themselves been anxious, to be able to be transparent about that and actually share from their heart what they themselves have been going through, to help others be aware that what they themselves are feeling isn't pathologic, but actually is quite normal in this climate. This leads to the idea of empathy and compassion and how important that is, especially coming from leaders. And part of empathy and compassion is having confidentiality and respecting the privacy of the people who do speak to you about some of the things that they've been anxious about. And finally, it's so important to provide ample resources to help people deal with their anxiety. Obviously, lending them an ear and empathy and compassion as a manager and as a leader is hugely important, as is providing resources to either other individuals or HR resources of individuals they can speak with, or if the anxiety is more substantial, perhaps referring them to a therapist so that the anxiety does not get to a point where it becomes a diagnosable condition that affects even further their workplace performance. I hope this has been helpful, and thank you again for having me.
So, Chester, what thoughts do you have as you heard some words of wisdom from Dr. Anna?
Well, first off, I'm a huge fan. She really is brilliant. Adrian and I have had her on our podcast, Anxiety at Work, as well. And, she basically went through the three things that we've discovered as well, which I love. What I really like about what she added was ample resources to make sure that, once you've had those conversations, once you've had the empathetic and compassionate conversation, not only are they assured that it's confidential, I'm convinced that one of the reasons that people won't have those conversations with their managers and supervisors is they're afraid that they'll talk, that it'll spread around the workplace and they'll become diminished because of their vulnerability. So her then adding to that ample resources. Where can we go to get help? Can we get you a therapist? Can we get you some counseling? What more can we do? I think it's a brilliant addition. So, yeah, when you listen to Anna, you're going to learn something, right?
Most definitely. Because, and I like that we remain, as since this is the Mindful Marketer live stream, be mindful of the somatic impact of anxiety in our bodies. For me, my anxiety gets stored in my shoulders and neck and in my belly. And so just waking up and doing a check-in to say, okay, what's the state of my mind and my body is not some spiritual awakening step, right? This is scientifically proven. Another great book that I invite people to read and to better understand how we work and manage our anxiety it was written by Dr. Vanderbork out of Netherlands, called The Body Keeps the Score. It's a terrific breakdown of what research has taught us about where and how we store it. So, food for thought.
Yeah, it's very interesting. You talk about personal rituals. You've got that body check that you go through. Another wonderful insight that we've had in talking to healthcare professionals and counselors and so on is that need for personal rituals. And so often there are three that pop up, right? That seem to be some of the most common and most helpful. One is to make sure you're getting enough sleep, right? If you're not sleeping well, it's really hard to handle, any kind of stress or anxiety or deadlines or be at your best, right? The second is exercise. And I love when people point out, say, look, it doesn't have to be, 45 minutes on your Peloton, until you wring out your t-shirt because you're soaking wet. It can be simply get your body moving. Get up and go for a 5-minute walk, a 10-minute walk. Just change your space and wake your body up a little bit. And the third one that I find is most common is to meditate. Whether you're spiritual and you say your prayers, or you have your mantras, or, you've got your apps on your phone, that time to just disconnect and be quiet and meditative. Those are three that we see pop up time and time again. Another one that I personally enjoy is a gratitude journal. As you get caught up in all the things that might happen, as you so well said at the beginning of the interview, just take a minute to sit back and say, gosh, I'm surrounded by people that love me. I'm surrounded by people that care about me. I don't have to worry about my personal safety in my neighborhood, whatever they might be. And the list can become very long. I personally I've kept a gratitude journal for years now. And it's a great reminder that in the midst of all the things that we tell ourselves are going wrong, there's also a pretty good list of things that are going right. So those personal rituals, I think, are also very important. Do you have personal rituals, Lisa, that you go to?
Yes, I do. And I'm pretty honored and also surprised I have office hours once a month for all my clients and my CMOs and CEOs. And I have a day where I literally am there for check-ins with them on Zoom. And the last couple of months, the biggest question I've been getting is, Lisa, what are your practices for staying calm and grounded? And so I was very, very honored. So yeah, mine are very consistent sleep rituals, lots of water and electrolytes, because I do exercise almost daily. Lots of laughing with my pet, Muji, because he is hilarious. And also I just, as you know, from us knowing each other well, I do love to exercise. So really, I like to get my heart rate going because it helps me get out of my head and out of a state of worry. So high octane swimming or Orange Theory, your favorite color, work really well for me. We have a question from Ken. Hey, Ken in Canada. He's asking, how do you snap out of a state of anxiety? What are your thoughts and approaches on that, Chester?
Well, a lot of what we've already talked about. I think when you're in that state of anxiety, for me, I'm always amazed at what a brisk walk will do, just to get up and get outside, get the sunshine on your skin. Like you say, change your environment. I know this is hard for people, and yet for me, it's very effective. Who are your trusted confidants? Who are people that you can reach out to? I had a fun experience a while ago, and I was just having a really tough day. And so I reached out via email. It wasn't anything dramatic. And I just said to a dozen people that I know that I trust and love. And I said, hey, I'm having a tough day. Email me something good about myself. And it was delightful. I got a dozen emails. Chester, you're a great friend. Chester, you're the blah, blah, blah. And one from my friend Mike Goodson was great. He said, having a tough day. We all have tough days, but Chester, as far as friendship goes and good people. You aren't just good. You are a superstar of great friendship. You are the, and you went on. And I printed it out and I put it up on my bulletin board. And I thought, you know what? As bad as it gets, Mike Goodson's cheering for me. He said, you're the Spartacus of great friends. I thought, that's a great title. That's a great title.
He's trying to steal your thunder from being the apostle of appreciation.
Yeah. And I do think it's important. I have another little ritual that I like to do in the mornings, and I do my morning meditation early. And at the end of this meditation that I do, there's always a little positive phrase that kind of sums up, was it a day about dealing with anxiety, or was it a meditation about dealing with ambiguity or uncertainty or whatever it might be, perfectionism. And I take that little quote and I grab it as a screenshot and I send it out to a dozen friends. I've got a friend that just recently had a stroke, and the recovery's been a lot longer than he would like, that anyone would like. And just that little touch every day that say, hey, I'm thinking about you. I'm cheering for you. Here's a thought for the day. Hope you're having a great day. And I find that as I reach out and do that for other people, that it helps buoy my spirits as well. I text my kids almost every day. Hey, your dad's thinking about you, cheering about you. Hope you're having a great day. One of my sons started a new job. Another son has been in his new job a little longer. And just checking in. How's it going? How's the new job? Just know your dad's thinking about you. You're in my prayers. You're in my thoughts, and I'm cheering for you. I think when we get out of ourselves, it's a great way to jumpstart, to change that narrative that's in our head, that we're not measuring up and we're not who we would like to be. Does that make sense?
It makes such perfect sense. I mean, I'm coming up on December 3rd on our 50th live stream in partnership with LinkedIn and Marvia. And I have to tell you, I mean, it's all a part of my pay it forward strategy. And I absolutely love doing them. And, I have found out now, we've done a little bit of a count, and we've had more than 4,800 people participate. And a lot of these people are not able to hire me as their advisor or their coach, but they can, hop on a LinkedIn office hours, such as the one coming up on December 9th, and they're able to get some kind of value for either zero or a very, very few dollars. And so I think for me, that has helped me tame a lot of my own anxiety about all of the volatility surrounding us.
Yeah. One other thing, and I know we're coming up on our time here soon, but self-talk is really important. We were talking to a doctor the other day, Adrian and I, and she said, it's self-talk is that microphone you drop into your head. What are you saying to yourself? And I thought it was such a great analogy, drop a microphone in your head. We talked to another, quite a good athlete. I love tennis. I've been playing tennis since I was little, and they did a study of the top 100 tennis players. And they said, what's the difference between the top 10 and the bottom 90? And because I was very interested in this study, right? And they said, well, because physically the difference between the top 10 and the bottom 90 isn't that much. And yet the prize money, when you drop out of the top 10, falls off a cliff, right? Falls off a cliff. So they got to Pete Sampras, the great American tennis player, and they said, what is your self-talk? When it gets really tense in a match or at work, whatever analogy, what are you saying to yourself? And he says, I have a very positive mantra, and it's all is well. All is well. And I started to use it as I play tennis on Saturday mornings. And you know what? It works great because, to perform well, you can't be tight. You've got to be loose, whether it's in business or sports or whatever. Now, there was one exception, Lisa. There was one exception in the top 10 of negative talk that made the player play better. Can you name that tennis player? Are you a tennis fan at all?
Well, I just keep thinking of Arthur Ashe. I mean, he was such a calm and centered human from the outside.
Yeah, and a very positive self-talk for Arthur Ashe. The one negative talk tennis player that played better was John McEnroe. And if you know anything about Jen, are you kidding me? You can't be serious. Right?
You can't be serious. I remember him, but do you think, how did that not work against him? That's what I want to know.
Do you know, the only thing I can think of, Lisa, is there's an exception to every rule. And he was the exception. He was the one exception. I mean, he grew up in Queens. You know what I'm saying? He's a Queens kid. So.
I know what you're talking about.
Yeah. I got your tennis right here, pal. But yeah, so there is always an exception. I will tell you, for the vast majority of us, though, to have that mantra to go to, that all is well. Gary Ridge, another member of our 100 coaches, he's got a wonderful mantra. It'll all work out. Don't worry. It'll all work out. It always does. And, you know, and Gary's a delight to be around because he does. He just spreads that goodness and that calm. And don't worry, Chess. It'll all work out. It always does.
Yeah. The one that got me through some of my toughest moments when my parents passed away 15 or so years ago and my divorce was, my friends would just, you know, they really came out in droves and I was so grateful to them. I always would say to them, I look them straight in the eye and I'd say, everything always works out for me.
Yeah.
I mean, it may not work out on my schedule, but it always does work out for me. And so that's also a mantra that helps me get through some of these tough times right now. They're still a little tough. I mean, let's face it.
Oh, so, sure. And listen, there's always something to worry about. There always is. You know, right. and when you're anxious, you find them all. You know, you find them all. My dad had a great sense of humor, and he used to say, "Don't tell me not to worry. 90% of the things I worry about never happen." Right? And he was convinced because he was worrying about it. Don't tell me not to worry. And, you know, in a wonderful way, it was just a way to say, hey, look, just control what you can control. And we talk about that a lot in the book, too. So much is out of your control. And why worry about it? You can't control it. What can you control? Be a tasker. Just get to the next thing. You know, we talk to a lot of distance runners, marathoners, and so on. And we'd say, when you start the race, do you ever think about the end of the race? They go, never. You think about the next telephone pole. You think about the next hydration station. If you think about the end of the race from the beginning, it's overwhelming. It's overwhelming. So be a tasker.
Yes, I like that tasker concept. And I know that you have a lot more about this in your book, Anxiety at Work. I have this marked up so much because you and Adrian did a stellar job at citing live examples from your own clients, as well as so many experts in the area of mental wellness and employee engagement. So I really honor you, Chester, for the work you're doing, for brightening my life with not only your spirit, but also your bright orange colors.
Yeah, it is a happy color, no doubt about it. And, you know, thank you for promoting the book and sharing our platform, or sharing your platform with us, getting the word out about mental health. You know, it really is an epidemic right now, along with the pandemic, of anxiety in the workplace. And for those of you that are just looking for some more information, we've got a wonderful newsletter called The Gratitude Journal. We publish it twice a month. Please follow us on LinkedIn and follow us as well, you know, at our website, thecultureworks.com. We'd love to see you there.
Wow, some wonderful resources there. And you have at least 4 best-selling books now. So I hope people will invest their time and energy over these colder months ahead in some really good reading to get us grounded and prepared for a much better 2022. My life is richer and less anxious with you in it, Chester.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be with you, Lisa.
Please come back and see us, and I wish you and your family a wonderful holiday.
Yes, happy Thanksgiving. I love this holiday. You just eat. You don't have to worry about presents and stuff. Eat, watch football, and take a long nap.
Absolutely. I love naps. Chester, we'll see you again soon.
Take care.
Be well. Happy Thanksgiving. Well, my friends, this is our mindful moment. And wow, wasn't that great? Yes, Todd, thank you for sharing all of your comments too in the chat. I have 3 takeaways that I want to pass on to you today. And remember, if you want more resources and you want great insights and invites from me, go to themindfulmarketer.com or visit my website to lisanorell.com, because we want to make sure you're aware of all the great speakers coming up between now and well into next year, including some of my new insights with our CMO clients. So here are 3 takeaways from today. The first I learned is that I was very sobered by only 3% of employees using the employee assistance programs. These are wonderful resources. So turn to those people and ask for the kind of help you think you need. This is the time to do it. Take good care of your mental hygiene. Number 2, I loved Chester's tip on turning to someone if you sense that something is off and say, I noticed. And just saying, I noticed and I care, what kind of help or resources can I provide you? And then the third is, when you feel that anxiety, look at what the cause of that anxiety is and make sure that you are focusing on areas you personally can control versus things you cannot control. I coach a lot of very successful people. And sometimes I have executives who want to climb that hill and they want to change the company's culture by themselves, or they want to get promoted in a company where they cannot get promoted. There are too many, not hurdles. There are big brick walls keeping them from reaching that potential. So they have to be able to step back and say, can I really control this? And if not, I have to come up with a different strategy. So those are my 3 takeaways for you today. Let me close by saying that we have another great session coming up again in December. So I'll be coming back from my Thanksgiving nap, and we're going to be looking back at 2021 with 2 terrific leaders, Mr. Jeff Perkins, former CMO and now CEO of Park Mobile, who just launched a book. And he's going to be talking to us about some of the mindful moments and lessons that he learned as a marketing leader in 2021. And we will also be joined by the author of Aligned, Hortense Legentil, December 3rd, as we sit together, reflect, learn, and plan for 2022. So I hope you'll join us. We're going to see in a moment more about that. And in the meantime, I want to wish all of you in the United States a healthy and joyful Thanksgiving. And please come back December 3rd.